I'll be doing a legal land buying series where I'll be sharing a 6-part series of the legal land buying process. So for those who don't know me, my name is Ruth Tanui. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I'm also the founder and managing partner of Ruth Tanui and Company Advocates. Today I'm going to share 12 things to consider before buying land in Kenya. The first thing, do an extensive search on the land you want to purchase. And this one, I think the best person who can help you is an advocate, because normally there's, as you know, in Kenya there's a freehold and a leasehold. So that's why it's very important to do your search. Because remember, for instance, for leasehold it's only 99 years. So this means you have to look at the term. And after 99 years, if no one reapplies, the land reverts back to the government. It's a leasehold. Leasehold means the government is the one leasing the land. So that's why it's very important to do your search, so that at least you make sure you look at even at the time remaining. I had a client who was purchasing a leasehold that had remained, I think it was 4 years remaining on the term. And of course, I told my client this is very risky, because of course, as for people who know, leasehold are in urban areas, so they are mostly expensive. So in most instances, you get a loan from a bank to purchase. You want to get a loan. Even most banks will shy away from this, because if it's remaining 3 years and you're getting a loan that maybe even is for 3 years, it's so risky, because that means you have to reapply. And remember, the reapplication, it's not automatic. You're given first priority as the current owner, but it's not automatic. So I normally feel it's very risky. When it's 3 years remaining, that's very risky. So that's why it's very important to do that extensive search. Before, I normally say, and this is important even before you spend any coins in doing a search and everything, it's very important to know, understand, do a search on the property you want to purchase. Get to know where the land is located and its surroundings. But then this one, it may sound obvious, but there are people who are maybe in the diaspora and don't have the luxury of actually visiting the land. It's very important to know the land you're purchasing and its surroundings. You cannot purchase land that is adjacent to an airport, adjacent to a railway line. It's very risky, or a national park. And I'm going to tell people it's very risky because there are many consents you may need to get. And those consents, they are not guaranteed that you'll get. So that's why it's just better to avoid such situations. So that's why it's very important to know where your land is located and its surroundings. So just almost related to the second point, do you know the physical condition of the land you want to purchase? Frequently, I'm sure you have seen news whereby people purchase land where it was waterlogged. Like during the rainy season, your land, your houses are dipped in water. There's even one I was seeing, like it's completely submerged. The house is completely submerged in water. Now, see, these are the things you have to make sure you consider. And the best thing, of course, you get an expert. I normally tell people that's even for us as lawyers. Me as a lawyer, I normally work with other experts, professionals. For instance, for the one for the environment, even me myself going to the land, I'm not an expert to know this land is waterlogged. So the best thing is you bring in experts, environment impact assessment professionals who can assess for you the environment of the land you want to purchase. So it's very important to ensure that you understand the physical condition of the land you want to purchase. Also, there's also the issue of you might be purchasing land for agricultural purposes. Have you confirmed that that's the purpose of the land? Like, can it even, like when you plant and everything? So that's why understanding the physical condition of the land is very important to let it match what you want to use, what the land is supposed to be used for. The fourth one, ensure, I normally say if you're purchasing land in an area you're not familiar with, purchase land during the rainy season. The rainy season, it will bring out a lot of issues that you would not know. That's why even you find, I normally see, by the way, like people intentionally in places where there's issues with waterlogged areas. As I've given an example in the previous lesson, you purchase land and that place is waterlogged. So it affects everything, and water, it damages everything. So it's not worth it. So me normally say purchase land during the rainy season if you can. Of course, there are other factors, but if you can, please, especially in areas that you're not familiar with, unless you're purchasing in an area you're familiar with, maybe you've grown up in or you know it very well. So that one can make sense. But if you're purchasing land from an area you don't wait for the rainy season. That's why you'll find, I normally see, like, you'll find people in such areas, even if the ones you saw in the news where the house was submerged and everything, they'll still be sold. Now what people normally do, they wait for the dry seasons to sell that land. And of course, during the dry season, those areas, trust me, they are normally perfect. They're perfect locations. But now, and if you can't purchase, as I've stated in the previous lesson, If you can't purchase during the rainy season, or maybe, of course, circumstances, you want to purchase it at this moment, get an environment impact assessor to assess for you. Get a professional who can confirm for you that this area is good for residents, whatever you want to use the land for. Lesson number 5. Are you familiar with the different types of lands in the market? It's very important because under the Constitution and under the land laws of Kenya, there are 3 types of lands. You have the public land, the community land, and the private land. So that's why it's normally good to understand this, because there are people who have made the mistake of buying community land that is being sold by an individual. I remember community land is owned by a certain group of people. So that's why it's very risky to purchase such properties, community land. And then public land, as you know, it's the government who's the private owner of that land. And of course, if it's another person apart from the government selling you that land, that's already an issue. So that's why it's very important to understand. And also, of course, the important on freehold and leasehold. It's important for you to understand, because as a foreigner, you cannot own a freehold. I've had a foreign, and also this applies also to a company. People think that when you go to if you're a foreigner and you own a company in Kenya, registered in Kenya, you can purchase, as long as by the in directorship, it doesn't matter. As long as there's one director who's not Kenyan, one, that's enough for that land not to be purchased by that company, not to purchase freehold. The citizenship, the directors have to be all Kenyan citizenship for them to own a freehold. So that's why it's very important to understand these different land types in the market and how they operate. Another thing you need to consider is, have you contacted all the relevant professionals in purchasing land? But then there are people who just wing it. They purchase land without using any kind of professional. Not a lawyer, not a valuer, not a surveyor, not an environment impact assessor, none of them. So that's why I normally say it's very important. Some you get lucky, you're not caught, but it's very important to involve the right professionals. This is especially for people who are purchasing land in areas they're not familiar with, or you're purchasing land with, like, a Kenyan in the diaspora. You're not present in the country. So that's why it's very important you make sure when you're purchasing land, contact professionals. How many people? I was even seeing a story on Facebook whereby someone had purchased land in, I think, 2017 at, I think it is also the rural areas, at like 900,000. But because they didn't get a value, the property had been overvalued. I think at that period, maybe that land was around 200 or 250 in the area. So until now, they have been trying to dispose of the property, they have not. So that's why it's very important, especially if you're purchasing land that you don't intend to maybe live in, or for commercial purposes or for agricultural purposes, just for investment purposes. Get a valuer so that the land is not overvalued. Especially a lot of real estate companies, I normally know them, they overvalue the property. You find someone is selling the property triple the amount. Now trust me, if you're buying land triple the amount and you want to dispose it off in like a year, of course that will be so hard for you to dispose of the property. And that's the common reason why it's hard to dispose of property in Kenya. It's hard for someone to this. It's because of the value. So make sure you work with a valuer to make sure you're buying within the market value, especially for investment purposes, or even for, you want to buy land at an overpriced price. Even if you want to for residential purposes, a surveyor, make sure you use a surveyor for boundary disputes, for boundary issues. Remember, if the title deed states that the acreage is, let's say, 2 acres, get a surveyor who will get a map and confirm it actually matches, so that you're not buying, because there are circumstances where you're buying 2 acres, but kwa ground vitu ni different. When you go to the ground, when it's measured, it's less. It's maybe 1.6. Like, it's less what's on the ground. So it's very important, so that maybe you'll decide what you'll decide to do. Maybe you can renegotiate the price, or maybe just let it go. And it's very important to ensure you're using professionals. I don't understand why, by the way, people, when they purchasing land, someone is purchasing land worth 3 million or even 1 million, but they're not willing to take in these steps. Of course, it will cost you money, but make sure you get licensed. If it's a lawyer, make sure they are licensed. If it's a valuer, make sure they are licensed. If it's a surveyor, make sure they are licensed. Any professional you use, that's why they are professionals, they have to be licensed. Because you also need to protect yourself. Remember, if you use a licensed professional, if anything goes left, make sure you even have agreements with them. You can protect yourself. 7 things you need to consider is, who will be your neighbor? That's very important, because remember, you don't want to be purchasing a residential property and your neighbor is going to be a club or a church. Yeah, church is not like it's a bad thing, but there's the issue of the noise. So that's why it's very important to make sure you know who your neighbors are. I normally advise my clients who wants to purchase land, make sure, that's why when the first question most of the time I ask my clients, have you done a physical visit? Have you spoken to the neighbors? Apart from the neighbors, knowing your neighbors well, the other thing is you will understand what's actually going on. Because there's a time we were purchasing some property, just from talking to the neighbors, we found out this property had issues in court, but the seller had concealed that. So it's very important for you to know your neighbors. And remember also, you don't want a situation whereby there's sometimes there are families who have inherited property and they're selling, but you find the families, there's issues about that. People don't want someone to sell. Now, can you imagine a situation whereby you have bought from a sibling, well, the family didn't want that sibling to sell, and you're just going at the center of it. That's already some issues that you need to think twice about it. Especially that's where you want to set up your family to live there. So it's very important to know who your neighbors are going to be, and not even just neighbors generally. In general, I've already stated this indirectly in the issue of professionals, but make sure, are you purchasing that property within the prevailing market price? Because it's very important. They have said, especially if you're buying for investment purposes, and even sometimes I normally tell people, you may not be buying land for investment purposes. You may be buying here even to build a home, but things happen. Sometimes something comes up and you need to dispose of the property. That's why it's very important to know you're buying that property within the prevailing market price. Even before you use the valuers, find out from people, neighbors, talk to neighbors, find out what is the price of land at the moment. So, because I normally know people normally sell land at overpriced, and that's why I normally see people online saying it's very hard to dispose of property. It's because one of that, of course, there are other factors, but the major factor is normally because people buy land at overpriced. So, of course, if you have bought land at 1 million, you expect in 1 year to sell it at least at maximum 1.5, at 1.2, 1.3, But now, if you bought land that is 600,000 market value and you bought it at 1 million, of course, that won't make sense. So that's why many people, by the way, especially now people who need liquid money immediately, because of maybe medical reason, you find someone selling it at a very high price. So it's very important to know that your question is supposed to, are you purchasing that property within the prevailing market? A very important thing you need to consider. Do you know the user regulation of the land you want to purchase? There are many lands that are restricted. You may find the user regulation just says it's commercial. Others it's only agricultural. Others it's only residential. And at the moment, so maybe if you buy a commercial and you want to convert it you have to do change of user. And any lawyer will tell you change of user, apart from it being a hectic process, it's normally so expensive. Most people, they purchase land, especially within urban areas, without knowing the user regulation. And for you are purchasing land to do commercial and you find maybe that place is only residential, and this means you have to do change of user, or maybe you'll just it's very important to understand the user regulation of the land you want to purchase. So things you need to consider, because that now will determine whether you're going ahead to purchase that property or not. The 10th thing you need to consider, what are the payment terms of the property? It's very important to know that, because first of all, there are people who would want you to pay the whole purchase price from the beginning, which is a very risky venture. Remember, there's a reason why the law considers you pay 10%. Because in case of anything, if it's land that is 1 million, if you pay 10%, it's better losing 10% than losing 1 million. Of course, 10% is still a good amount, but it's very important to ensure that you know the payment process before you commit yourself. Another thing is, there's some people who want cash, who want to deal with cash. Of course, that's very risky. I normally tell people that's very risky. Never purchase land with cash. Remember, if in case of anything, even sometimes when you go to court, even though court may not give you land, the best court can do for you is return your money. And the only way court can return your money is if there's a paper trail to show you send money to this person. So I normally say, make sure you know the payment. Apart from knowing whether you're paying, the percentage you're paying, know whether it's cash. There are some people who want cash. Don't agree to buy cash. There will be no evidence, because now this means you'll go and withdraw money and go and pay them in cash. Or maybe at least make sure, but cash me, as I don't allow cash. It's already a red flag for me. But if you have to, make sure at least you get an acknowledgement receipt, a genuine one. So make sure you ensure you know the payment terms before things you consider, before you go ahead to do anything. This is the first thing you need to do before you pay any money, before you do anything. What you need to know is, do you know the services available around now the land you need to purchase? Make sure all the services you need are available, because you cannot be getting a residential property and there's no electricity yet, there's no water yet. Those are expenses. And if someone will tell you that, for people who have done it, it's normally expensive. It adds up. It really adds up. Especially if you go to an area whereby now you have to get electricity to there, you have to get water, or maybe when you're buying for commercial purposes, there's no water and electricity. It's going to be an expense. And if it's not something you consider from the beginning, remember, it's better you know it's not there, so that you can decide to go half with the seller, or the seller caters for it, or even you tell the seller, maybe there's some by there who agree for the first 2 months you don't pay rent, or if you're leasing, this is if you're leasing, you don't pay rent, or you deduct it from the purchase price. You find a way, but it's better. These are things you should know from the beginning, so even if you're going ahead, there are things you'll factor in your sale agreement. So, and then 12, consider is, who are you dealing with? Are you dealing with the seller? Me, by then, I'm normally hesitant. That's even the people who, I normally, when I get a person who wants to purchase land, I tell them, who are you dealing with? Yeah, they are genuine brokers, but I would just prefer that you deal with the owner of the land. It's very important to deal with the owner of the land, because the risk here is, remember, the broker is not only selling to you, they are selling to a lot of people. So that's why it's very important to ensure that the person you're dealing with is actually the owner of that land. And if it's a company, at least you're dealing with one of the directors. After you've done the search and you've confirmed this is the director, one way or another. Because I'm thinking, even if it's a broker, they should be working hand in hand with the seller. There should be a point you're supposed to meet the seller, but don't make any payment before you meet the seller. It's very important, because that's why even brokers, of course, they normally get keep because they want to, get their commission. But they normally, of course, it's something, their terms are supposed to agree with the seller. But it's very important for you to deal with the seller, of the owner of the land, because sometimes you might be, and there'll be no defense here, because if the seller says they didn't sell it to you, they don't know you, they'll be right, because they didn't. So, and if someone may normally insist, if this person is an agent or a broker, get evidence, a letter of authority, or any evidence to show that they are, acting on behalf of the seller. But make sure, even may normally say, because remember, the seller is not supposed to sign your sale agreement. There are people who deal with surveyors, which has never made sense to me. A surveyor has a role, and that role, when it's done, it's back. So you have to make sure you're dealing with the seller, the owner of the land. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you find someone be like, oh, I'm the son, I'm the daughter, no, it has to be the owner. Because God forbid, sometimes you may find when maybe the owner is deceased and someone doesn't want to tell you the land is under succession, because of course you'll back out. So you start dealing with other people to an extent that by the time you know that the seller maybe he's deceased, or maybe the seller is not even in the picture, you've made payment. That's how people are conned. You find someone takes you to the land and they tell you, someone takes you to where the land is located and they tell you that, so you even make payment to the wrong people. So those are the 12 things that you need to consider before purchasing land. Like, this is even before you make any payment. They are very, they may look non-serious, like not that important, but it's very important to consider these 12 things. So in the next video, in our legal land buying process series, I'm going to share common mistakes people make while buying land in Kenya. So I hope this video has been informative. If you want to get our services, I'm going to leave the contacts here on the screen. You can reach out to us, our website. You can also check out our website. I'll put also the link in the description box and the information that if you want to get our services. For those who will be interested, there's this book, Simplified Legal Process of Buying Land in Kenya. It's a book that I authored. It's just basically the legal, like it's guiding you. It's basically like a guide to anyone who is intending to buy land, to assist you not at least to get conned. So if you're interested in purchasing this book, again, you can use the same contacts of our law firm, but I'll put contacts here on the screen if you want to get a hold of this book. This book is Kenya shillings 1,000, and for this October, since it's my birthday, I'm going to give it at a discount of 800. So if you're interested, reach out. Thank you.